Good afternoon and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen and I'm the Executive Director here at USTA Florida. In today's episode, I get to chat with one of my favorite women in tennis, Jennifer Gelhaus. We profiled Jennifer during Women's History Month back in 2021. Jennifer's been a tennis coach for 15 years. She's coached at the collegiate level and at various clubs and public facilities. Jennifer currently is a tennis professional teaching at the Sarah Vandenberg Tennis Center in Pasco County, but she also spends her summers teaching on Martha's Vineyard. She has a wealth of knowledge and experience in the tennis industry, and most recently, she launched her own podcast, Vida Tennis. What I like about Jennifer's podcast is that it covers a wealth of topics and her guests are more human interest than anything else. I've truly enjoyed listening to her podcast, and it remains at the top of my pod list whenever I want to tune in and learn something new about tennis. Jennifer also shares her own experience and knowledge in her podcast, and I think she's one of the great women voices out there in tennis. Today, she joins me to talk about that topic, how we can get more women in tennis, what are the big challenges we're facing, and how we can support each other in raising our voices as women thought leaders. I hope you enjoy this episode with Jennifer, and please take a moment to follow Vida Tennis on all of your favorite podcast channels. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast today. I am so excited to do this mashup with the Vida Tennis podcast. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. Well, can you just tell me, I obviously know your background, but I really want our audience who maybe hasn't listened to the pod or doesn't know you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in tennis, but maybe any other interests that you have? I know you sort of have a research education background, which I just found out recently. So you're such a fascinating person. Share with us sort of a little bit about you and who you are.
Sure. So I am originally from Venezuela, and I started playing tennis when I was 11 years old. And then I came to the U.S. when I was 16 for college. So my junior career as a tennis player was very, very short. I started competing when I was 14, and, by 16, the year I turned 17, I started college. So it was a very short period of time. I was lucky to get a very nice school to offer me a full scholarship here in the U.S. And I studied biochemistry. And I had no intention of ever being a tennis coach, never even considered that. Wasn't even a thought in my mind, to be honest. But it's funny looking back now because I've always been obsessed with tennis. Ever since I hit my first ball, that's been my favorite thing to do. And I've been doing that, obsessed, I would think, with tennis since that moment. So it's interesting that I never thought about it. But anyway, I graduated with a degree in biology, and then I went into research at Indiana School of Medicine because my sister lived there. So that's where I just, gravitated towards. And I did research for 4 years. I was doing a molecular genetics program, and I started really missing tennis. So I started coaching at the college team at IUPUI, and I started realizing that I really loved coaching. And then something interesting happened. We had a huge recession, as you know. That was around that time. I had been already, starting a PhD program and doing research and coaching. So I was super busy doing all three things. And the recession happened, and they had to let go a bunch of people at the lab. And so I was one of them because I was one of the most recent hires. So I was let go, and that gave me a huge pause and a moment to think, what do I really want? And that's when I decided, thanks to my sister who also helped me figure this out, that I love tennis and I should pursue a career in this. So I did, and never looked back. I've been now in the industry for 13 years. I started my career as a coaching professional in Cincinnati, and then I moved to Florida. And ever since I moved to Florida about 10 years ago, I've been splitting my time between the Northeast and Florida. So I live in Florida, but in the summers I leave. My first position was out in the Hamptons. I was there for 7 years. And now for the last 4 years, I've been on Martha's Vineyard, which is, here in the Cape in Massachusetts. So yeah, that's my story. Other interests, I have many interests. I love to travel. I love languages. And I'll play anything with a racket. So let's go. I'm ready to play pickleball, padel. Give me the paddle, give me the racket, and I'm in.
Yeah, and I know you had a really interesting conversation with Tim Buick on your podcast about that, actually, where you asked him about his favorite, and I was very excited when you said your favorite was still tennis.
Oh, well, 1,000%. Yes, tennis is my first love. I do feel like I'm cheating a little bit on it, but no, I enjoy all of it. It's all good. It's all really fun.
Well, I love talking to you because for many, many reasons. One is we started in this industry, even though you have a tennis background and I don't, around about the same time. I've been here for 13 years now, or 12 years now, going on 13. And, so perspectives on the industry probably fairly similar, like being as that's the amount of time we've worked in the industry. And then your background academically, and just I love that you have different perspectives on things. And I think that's so important to bring to the table is people who have different interests and different ideas. I also like to travel. So I do like following you on Facebook and the adventures that you go on with you and your husband. I'm like, oh, she's going someplace fun. And that catches my attention. So we're somewhat kindred spirits in that particular space. So I'm always very happy to talk to you and just sort of follow you and what you're doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, today I wanted to talk about women voices in tennis. And, this is something that's very important to me. And I know it's important to you. And I was so excited when you started your podcast because no matter what the format is, I just love to see women using their voices and really stepping in to be sort of thought leaders, I guess is kind of how I phrase it. And I think we need more of that. So I'm curious, what really prompted you to start your podcast, and maybe what have you learned so far since you have been doing it?
Sure. So it all started with me just listening to podcasts. I really got into it, and this was years ago. And in the back of my mind, I always thought it would be really cool to start a tennis podcast where I can talk to people. And I never really pursued it. I just never felt ready. Didn't really, I guess, have the confidence for it until I thought, this year I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it messy. I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm just going to go for it and figure it out as I go. And that's what I've been doing. And it's been working out really well. I've had some amazing guests. People have been really kind to take the time to participate. And it's been wonderful. I think that there's a lack of sharing in general in our industry. It's a lot of things are a mystery, right? Not necessarily the on-court stuff. The on-court stuff, we're very great about sharing.
Right.
You find all the drills, all the videos on Instagram about the latest drill for the forehand, for the serve, whatnot. But the other parts of our industry, the human side, the financial side, are things that it's just a big mystery in our world. So that's the conversations I want to be having. I don't want to necessarily on my podcast want to be talking about, who just won the US Open. That's really interesting to me. Of course, I'm a fan of tennis, but what I'm really about is demystifying our industry and also giving people opportunities that might not, like having guests that might not usually be a speaker at a conference.
Right.
Talking to people that are in our industry that others may not necessarily hear from. So that was also something that really interested me, because I feel that when I go to conferences, and no disrespect to any of those professionals, because they're amazing and that's why they're there, the speakers at these conferences, but I feel like it's always the same people.
100%. 100%. I talk about that all the time. And e- we have to get out of our box, right? And even bringing people in from outside of tennis, I think too. So it's not just, hey, the same people in tennis, but it's like, how much are we reaching outside of our box and bringing people in that, from other industries, because we can learn from everybody. And I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, that was something really important to me, is that I want to give a voice to the pro that might not even attend a conference, that has been doing this for years, because they have very valuable knowledge that they should be sharing too. So yeah, that's kind of my motivator for what I'm doing right now.
Well, I think you're doing a great job with it. Like I said, I really have taken a lot of, like, I think, wow, maybe I should do that. Like, that's a great idea. I think, just you even lending your own knowledge and experience, which is something that I don't typically do in the pod. I usually don't share my own thoughts on it. I think once a year we might do that. But I loved that you sort of took that time to say, hey, I'm going to do a series where it's like just me sharing my own thoughts and wisdom. And some of the things you touched on there that are really important to everybody never get talked about. So, you're true to what you designed it as is what you're fulfilling. So I don't think it's messy at all. I actually think it's one of the best podcasts out there.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful to hear.
Um, I just want to talk a little bit about women's voices here for a minute. Is that you mentioned speakers at conferences, and we don't often have women on the dais either. And when we do, we're typically not talking about the space that women have or don't have in our industry. So my question, or what I want to really chat about, is why do you think it's important for us to have more women's voices, like speaking up on industry issues and kind of being those thought leaders? And is there a particular need for that in the coaching space versus maybe some of the other industry spaces that we have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, like I was saying earlier, it is important to hear about issues in our industry in general. I think that it's important that we share information amongst coaches and facilities. It's only going to help our sport grow. I think it is very important that we hear women in particular, so that we can also attract more women to the industry, right? Representation is huge, and it's what leads to empowerment, right? And we have experiences as women that men just don't, right? Because they're not women.
Right.
And I think it's the representation part is so important, because the world, so even like for example at USTA, right? Like, the world doesn't, if we want to grow tennis, we have to represent the world. If we want to reach to all the communities, all the genders, we have to represent that. Tennis is just for men. So I think that's why we need to listen to women, because we need that representation. We need that connection. I think when we hear women share the stories, it's inspiring to other women, and that's it. I mean, I think that's the basics of it, the basis of it.
Well, it's such a good point too. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into the pod. And you came up with some really great questions for us to tackle today too. What do you think the biggest challenges are in getting more women in coaches? And how do we get more women to speak and use their voice? Like the choice that you made to say, I'm going to do this podcast. I'm not entirely comfortable with it, right? And open yourself up to say, but I'm going to step into this space as a woman. How do we get more women to do that? To say, yes, I might not be 100% comfortable with this, and I might be scared that I'm going to say, I think you said on your podcast, scared that you're going to mess up or say something wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. How do we get that to happen?
I'm trying to do it by leading by example. It is hard, right? Because especially I feel like it gets more and more difficult nowadays to feel free to express yourself because everything is so polarized, and you're you can say something one day that maybe you just word it wrong. It can be taken out of context. And so I understand that fear and that resistance 100%. We all have those moments where we're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I should have said it like this. But at the end of the day, perfection is boring. Like, nobody wants anything perfect. I think what's interesting is we're interesting as humans because of our imperfections. So I think it is important to just be authentic. And if you really feel like you messed up and you said something wrong, you can always apologize, right? You can always make a statement or say, oh, or get a clarification on something. And yeah, I think it's a little unfortunate that everything's so polarizing right now, because I also feel that um that it just makes it hard to share, and people feel that I forgot where I was going with that, but people feel that you have to agree, and if you don't agree, you can't be together, or you can't be friends or business partners, right?
Yeah.
And I think that hurts not just the tennis industry, but the world. I think it's important to have different opinions and be respectful of different opinions and be open-minded to hear somebody out, and be open-minded that maybe they'll change your mind, maybe not. But I just think that people are really very stuck in their ways.
There's an interesting, what you're talking about here is an interesting dynamic, but it also reminds me, I read this book called The Courage to Be Disliked, and it's not the easiest read, and it's not the best read. You can look it up and see the reviews of it, but part of the reason I read it is I was really curious about why people would get into a room, and if there was somebody who like offered a counter opinion or disagreed with something or questioned it, that the room automatically became silent, or it was sort of like, oh, we don't do that, and like, what is happening here? And like, I don't like that this person questioned me or asked me. And of course,
Right.
there's respectful ways to do that. So I read this book, and the premise of the book, just to boil it down very, very briefly, is that when somebody criticizes you or whatever, how you feel about that is 100% in your control, right? And if you manage that and say, okay, Jennifer and I are going to have this conversation today, and there are going to be people out there who may not like it, right? They might say, I think you are totally wrong. Great. There's no obligation that makes me feel bad or change my behavior. If I feel that the integrity of what we did is good, and it adheres to my values and your values, it's a perfectly good conversation, and it's good information out there. And I think that that's sort of what we've lost a lot of times is, one, just respectful discourse, but two, the ability to say it's okay if people don't like what I say, they don't agree with it, they don't like the information that I have. I don't feel the need to have to change my relationship or my dynamic with that person. It's not personal.
Right.
But that's so rare these days, where so much becomes personal and so much becomes, well, I'm not going to talk to Jennifer because she disagreed with me in that meeting or whatever. And it's really limited our ability to have meaningful conversations about difficult topics and things we don't have solutions to. So, I mean, I know I feel that every day. And it seems like you similarly feel that way, that you almost can't disagree anymore because it becomes personal.
Exactly. People are so uncomfortable with disagreement. And I think the disagreement is where the creativity begins, right? It's like, okay, we disagree. How can we get creative about finding a solution that meets somewhere in the middle that we're both comfortable with? If you're not willing to listen to each other, then you're just gonna fight.
Yeah, that's right. Or you just won't talk at all, and that gets you nowhere.
Exactly. And then I know there was another part to your question there, something about were the biggest challenges for women?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is to get more women in coaching. So, certainly that wasn't your intentional career path, and then you ended up there. What do you see as those big hurdles that we aren't addressing, or maybe we are addressing, we just haven't quite found the solution yet?
Yeah, so the first one, like I mentioned before, representation, right? That's huge. I mean, I was thinking about you actually because you were a softball player, right?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. So I've always wondered, and I'll ask you this: did you ever want to be a baseball player?
No, I didn't actually. But I started playing softball when I was 5, because my brother uh, he's almost 2 years older, and he was enrolled in baseball. And I said, I want to play softball. Like, that was why I said, I want to play. And they were like, you're not old enough yet. But my mom said, when you're old enough, we'll put you into
Yeah.
softball. Yeah. So it was really his interest in baseball that then triggered me as a, 4-year-old to say, I want to play too.
Yeah. So I've always wondered, like, why is there no women's baseball? Is it because women just haven't seen it? It hasn't. They haven't seen it. They haven't seen women play baseball. So it's like, okay, women don't play baseball. That's just how it is. Let's go to play softball, right? And nothing against softball. I'm just using it as
Yeah.
an example of representation. You don't see it. It doesn't even occur to you, like, oh, I could play baseball, right? So that was just something that I was thinking.
And then you have one of the greatest movies of all time is A League of Their Own. Like, great, one of the greatest sports. Like, I will watch that movie 1,000 times, and the commentary and the complications of gender in a male sport, right? There's so many things about that movie. Granted, it's dated now, but still, it's such a great commentary on exactly the question you just asked. Like, did you ever think of yourself playing this? Why? And then now we have women playing football. We have girls that are, I think we just had the first um, woman playing on, I think at the college level, not as a kicker. And so, really thinking about these gender stereotypes in sports, right? It's really fascinating. But I always had women coaches. And I tell that story a lot, is that I played softball, field hockey. I was a cheerleader. I did gymnastics. And in high school, I played 3 sports, and all of my coaches were women. I thought that was normal.
Lucky you.
And that's what people in tennis tell me, is that they never had a woman coach. And I thought, well, that's crazy. Why was my experience so different than what's happening in tennis? And I don't know the answer. So I always ask people that question, like, why is it
Yeah.
so different?
So yeah, I mean the lack of representation, right? The stereotypes that we have to face. But I think it goes even deeper than that. I think um the coaching world is not necessarily a financially stable career. And I think women seek stability. I think just it's our nature to look for more stable career opportunities. And I think that coaching just isn't. And it needs to change, right? That's a different conversation we could have another day. But I think that's one of the hurdles. And I also think lack of support. I know that you're doing a lot of things with the USTA right now, USTA Florida. And I've been following all the different initiatives, and I think it's wonderful. But I think in general, there's a lack of support and mentorship and a lack of opportunities for women. I think sometimes we are our own worst enemies as women. I think women, we need to support each other. I think that's so important. Like, you having me on your podcast means so much, right? Like, you're sharing your audience now with me and in my little podcast, right? So you're helping me grow just by doing this. And that's huge that you're being the example. And in a coaching world, just think of how many women play tennis, how many women play league tennis, how many of those women are being coached by a woman, right? Like, not too many. And to me, it's like, if you're a woman, first of all, you 100% be supporting other women, right? Because we're all trying to get ahead. But if you're a student of the game, you're playing league or whatever, seek out those female pros, right? Give them a chance. I think sometimes we don't even get the chance. We just get automatically put with the little kids. And it's like we have so much more to offer than just teaching the kids. We're great with the kids, and trust me, I've reaped the opportunities of teaching kids. I've made a lot of money from teaching kids, and I love it. I enjoy it. But there's more to me, right? I can teach women, I can teach men, I can teach high performance, right? So like, give us a chance and have the same respect that you would have for a male coach. And I think that that's where it starts, is we supporting each other the way that we're doing.
This is the part where, sometimes I think my views typically diverge a little bit from where we are in the world today, is that, yes, women can be very good with children and have maternal, desires and are great mothers. And being a mom is probably the hardest job that anyone will ever have. I'm not a mom. And we can be boss leaders, and we can get on a court and hang with anybody, and we can be athletic, and we can be smart. And when I get a little I challenge sort of some of those easy answers where it's like, oh, we don't have more women because when women have babies, then it doesn't work for this. And I'm like, wait. We don't have more women before they have babies. So that full answer, right, doesn't sit with me. Is that one thing? Yes, that's one thing, but it's not all of the things. And it's a distraction from, why don't we have more Jennifer Gelhauses coming out of college that aren't even thinking about having a family yet? And I think there are other pieces to that puzzle that oftentimes get largely ignored. And for women do such a great job supporting each other in many, many ways, but I do want to see it happen more in the business boss, coach, leadership position, because I think that's the piece where sometimes I see the criticism coming from women to women, which I absolutely, detest and dislike. I don't want a woman saying to you, well, Jennifer, the reason you're not getting ahead is you need an older woman to mentor you, or you're not doing this, or, it's like you're holding that person back. And I want to hear, Jennifer, you can do anything that you want. And how can I help you get there? And sponsor a woman for anything that she wants to do. Like, my job is to help you get there, not tell you all the reasons you're not ready. Right. And that's the piece that I hear so often. You are not ready. You need this. You need this. And then on the men's side, I don't hear that. Like, I don't hear a guy saying to another guy, Bob, you're just not ready.
Right. And really, like, be about mean it, right? Mean it. Be supportive of female coaches, because a lot of times, like, you'll hear, you get cheered on. Yeah, you go, girl. You do it. Get it. But then they don't give you a chance to teach that. And, like,
yes, they don't give you your business. Right.
Right. Like, bring me business. Right. So I think that is key, is to supporting women, is doing that. And at conferences, like, it's so important that we have, just in general, new people, new speakers, but also women.
And show up and show up. That's the other thing. If you go to a conference and you see there's a woman that is speaking, whether it's a keynote, a panel, or whatever, and whatever the topic is, show up for her, because chances are she's taking a leap of faith to say, hey, maybe I'm not totally comfortable here. I hear that from women when I did my speaker training. I'm not totally comfortable. And I say, you're required by the end of this year to speak at something, and I will show up and be in the front row cheering you on.
Yeah.
And that has to happen, right? It's like, if that session is popular and we gain confidence and we support each other, do that. So show up, look for the women on the dais, look for the women speakers, and actually show up, and maybe even call them afterward and say what a good job they did, and how you really hope they speak more, open up other doors for them.
Right. And also, we need to raise our hand more.
Yeah.
So, we can talk all day about how we need more women, but also I feel like sometimes we're very shy or we don't think we got it, or I don't know, whatever the reason, we're not raising our hand enough to say, I'll speak at this. I have something to say. I will tell you, Laura, I have invited so many women to my podcast that I don't even hear back from.
Really? Oh, well, you need to tell me and I'll chase them down.
So what's up with that, right? I ask women all the time. I ask men right away. Let's go.
Yeah.
When are you available? Let's record it. Let's do this. I ask women, and I've had to purposely like really think about, okay, who else can I invite? Let me follow back up with her. And I'm not like trying to like bash women here, right? But I'm just saying, like, raise your hand, do it, right?
Yeah.
Because we need you. We need women to show up.
That we talk about that a lot in the, the speaker training, which is the first, I had done this in my career prior to coming here. That's what I did. I worked with leaders on communications and speaking and all of that. And I thought, well, why don't I do these classes for women to get them to the point where they're more comfortable, more confident, and sort of give them those magic tools that says, hey, you can speak on anything, anywhere, just follow sort of these things. And that's some of the things we talk about. And I think it comes down to job applications too, right? Whenever I've wanted a woman for a particular position, I'm just going to assume they're not going to apply. I call people, I call the women I know, like, hey, would you be interested in this position?
And by the way, guys do that all
the time. Yes. So I call women, and I think that's the other thing is, like, kudos to you for your podcast. Like, you're chasing down women. What we do is we say, well, I'm not 100% certain about this, and I don't want to fail or look bad, going back to what we talked about earlier. So I'm not going to do it. But the truth is that, and I say this all the time, if someone asks me to speak, I say yes. Not because I think I'm the best person on that topic or because I know the most, but because it is an example to say, if I don't say yes, is another woman going to say yes to it or do it? Probably not. Mm-hmm. And so say yes. And if you need help preparing, you've got people here. That's where we step in and say, call me. You're speaking on a topic you're not familiar with. Okay, you've got a built-in free resources that are going to sit down and help you work through that. Jennifer's going to guide you in the podcast. She's not just going to let you like linger out there, right? So these are safe bets to get more involved. But you're right. I hear that all the time, that we don't proactively raise our hands. And I'm guilty of that too. I've never called a conference organizer or submitted a topic, myself. Probably should do that more. But I already have a voice in the industry. I'm already out there. I want to see other women do that. And I'll help anybody that's like, I'm not sure about this. Just give me a buzz. I'll help you anytime.
Yeah. So it's a combination. I think it's on both sides, right? It's on us doing our part and then receiving the support that we desperately need. Yeah. There's not one person at fault here. I think we just need to move forward and raise our hand and get more women out there.
Agree. What other questions or topics do we have to dig into today? We're gonna.
Yeah. So I have questions for you.
Yeah, ask. I can't wait.
So one of my questions that I was thinking about, when we talked about doing this podcast was now that, UST Florida is doing all these different initiatives and is being more intentional about providing opportunities for women to grow, become speakers. Like, I've seen that you guys are even teaching, how to prepare a presentation, things like that. That's wonderful. I'm just wondering if there's been, I don't know, any backlash, or if you've heard from any men like saying that maybe that's not fair to them, or if we were to have, like, say equal number of female speakers and male speakers in a conference, for example, is that right? Is that fair? What do you think of that? Because we would be turning away more men, right? So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, that topic.
So that definitely happens. In fact, years ago when we first started down the women's initiative, and we were partnering with PTA, and we were doing this session, this pro women session, and we rolled around a little bit with, well, should it be just women? Should men be in the room? And the group, we had some great people in our group that were very, very well versed on all issues related to DE&I and worked in that space. And they said it should just be women because all the data and research shows that women are less likely to participate, engage, et cetera, if men are in the room. And this goes back to girls, that there's a lot of research with girls. And like one of the reasons we're doing all girls tennis camps is the data and the research is undeniable. So if you can have all the opinions you want. Like I could have an opinion that says, I'm fine with men being in the room and I think it would be better for me. Opinions are great, but research and information, and not just in tennis, but across the board. And those dynamics have to do with cultural dynamics in society, right? So it's not like, oh, okay, you just snap your fingers and that changes because you say you're going to be more open to it. It's a very, very much embedded culture. So we did get pushback on that. In fact, there were several men at that event that came up and were like, I have questions and I want to talk. And I'm like, yeah, but this isn't really for you. So we're doing this to create that space, and it worked well. And then we started to see some more of that happen. And the more we tested, and now even with the girls' camps, we actually survey. We survey every opportunity we do for women, we survey. And one of the key questions we always ask is, did the fact that this was an all girl or all women event impact your decision to attend? Overwhelmingly, like I'm talking 80 to 90%, the answer is yes. That people are looking for these opportunities, right? So if you take away like the personal and the gender, and you just say from a business opportunity, if someone tells you they are 80 to 90% more likely to attend because it's a women's only event, you would be foolish from a business perspective not to offer that. So I'll give you one other story where this happened. So we were getting ready to do the women's coaching workshop at the Billie Jean King Cup. And one of the great things about Billie Jean King Cup is we had an opportunity where everything that happened there was women-led, women-managed, and women delivered. So you had the Billie Jean King Cup, which is women play. You had that being managed by, Megan Rose, Stacey Alger, the whole team over there, which was women. You had our group doing an all-girls tennis camp with all women coaches, all girls. And then you had I think it was a level 1 workshop that we wanted to make all women, that it was for women coaches. And I want to say like a few weeks before the event, somebody decided we should open this up to non-women, the coaching workshop. And there are a few times where I will sort of like put my hand on the pole and say, no, absolutely not. And so my response was, first of all, who made this decision? Did a woman make this decision or did a man? And two, if this is a money issue, I don't care if 5 coaches pay or do it, I'll pay for it. And it went back to being an all women's coaches training. And the feedback from the trainers was that was the most participation we got out of women in a level 1 workshop of all the ones that we've done. So some of that is going back to what you said, women's experiences, the experiences that we have and we know throughout our life are very informative to these types of decisions. And we need to listen when women are saying these things are important to me. And the second thing is just being willing to say, how much time, energy, and investment and skin in the game am I willing to put in to make sure that these things are happening? And I think that's where we are here at USTA Florida, is to say, we'll put the money, time, energy, and effort from the volunteer and the staff side. This isn't under anyone's job description. It's what we do because we really, truly believe and care, and then use the information and the feedback we're getting from the participants and others to continue to drive and adjust and make those decisions that are going to support our business and bring more women in. So we're in a super good place right now. So anytime now we get pushback from men that say, well, why are you doing all women's thing? I can just point them to the data and the research and say, it's undeniable. And there's a reason why you see STEM camps for girls and all these other things happening. It's not just tennis. And the first thing to get to that change is to just accept that women do often feel more comfortable with other women.
Just like men feel more comfortable around men sometimes.
Right.
Oh, and they have their own things that they probably
They do.
But
Yep.
it's so important that, and thank God that you're there, that you're at the top. And this is why we also need women at the top of associations and companies that are making decisions that affect everybody, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe if you were a guy, it would have been like, oh yeah, maybe we should open it to a guy, like maybe a guy wouldn't have seen that value, right? But you see it clearly, because you're very passionate about it, because you're a woman.
And we have great male allies. I mean, I do have to say,
Yeah.
Our board is wonderful. Dave Andrews is really leading this. I've been leading this effort as one of our board members, but also we have other board members who are like, we've never gotten a question from a board member, like, why are you doing this? They were driving it from the very beginning. And then I see my colleague, we have a number of female executives. We have the highest number of female section executives that we've ever had, but we also have great male allies like Trevor Croneman. And, that it's SoCal empowers his team and really leads by example and says, I'm going to empower the women on my team to do this work. So you've got women like Nancy Abrams, who works for Trevor. And those are the things that we need, and we have them now. I think we're at that tipping point, right? I think we're pretty close to the tipping point, which is usually when things get really cantankerous, right? It's like we're getting close to getting the answer or doing things better. So this is really where you start to see who's not supportive, who is supportive, and you see a little bit of a break in there. And that's when you have to have those most courageous and difficult conversations to really say, this train has to get over this hump. And I'm sorry if you don't agree with it, but that probably means you're going to get left behind. I would say, I think we're close to that point with women in our industry with the amount of energy we have around it right now.
And backed by data, which is huge.
Backed by data.
Yeah. Plus, even like when it comes to, watching women's sports, the people, nobody's going to watch that. And like, you're basing that on what? There's no data, right? That says that people won't watch it. So market it, show it, and then let's look at the data, right? And that just goes for all female sports.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that trope that gets marched around all the time about women bringing in sponsors and viewership and all of that, I think like there's a big, this is probably the most controversial part of this. There's just a big of like moment right now that's happening. Not only did, Billie Jean King's story proves like, she brought in a sponsor to pay for the equal prize money, right? That wasn't even an issue, right? She covered her own equal prize money. Like that's a big deal. And that happened 50 years ago. And now you've got Coco Gauff in the final that had more viewers than the men's final did at the US Open. Like the idea that let's just focus on tennis for now. It's like sports, that women can't bring in viewership, they can't bring in sponsors. The majority of buying power is women, right? We spend money, right?
Men don't buy stuff. I'm sorry. Have you ever been to a pro shop? There's like 2 men's shirts. Why? Because men don't buy anything. Women drive the economy. We are the shoppers. We love to shop.
That's so true. The buying power is there, not just for ourselves, but, going back to women being moms and households, like we buy stuff for the house, we buy stuff for our kids. The buying power of women, I would say that if you are not looking at women as a critical audience, as a brand, you're making a huge mistake. Most brands know that, right? Mm-hmm. So it should be fairly easy to attract those brands to women's things. What we women have to do is watch women's sports, bring our kids to women's sports. Like we have to support other women. When, I watch women's softball, college softball religiously. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I will watch it unless I'm at a USTA meeting and I will watch it. We have to watch other women's sports. We have to watch the LPGA. We have to watch women's soccer. We have to watch. And I think women are in a good space right now that if we continue to support that, those brands, they'll know we're watching, and those brands and those marketing dollars will come.
And the guys will watch too. Like,
That a
absolutely.
lot of men prefer women's tennis. I've heard this a lot, is that they actually like to watch the women's game quite a bit more than the men's game and find it more interesting.
And how many men were watching the Women World Cup too? Like, it's there. The audience is there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally
Now,
agree.
what do you think is the easiest change that we can make in the industry to help increase the number of female back to the coaching world? What's the easiest thing that we can change today, in your opinion? Obviously.
Um, the easiest thing, that's a tough question, because I think it needs systemic change. And that's what our research, which will come out later this year, shows, is that there isn't really like one thing that's going to move the needle. It's all of the things. But I
Yeah.
would say the easiest thing we can do, which we're not doing right now, all the information and the data we're gathering around women in coaching, all the research that's happening, which is very, very good research from the Tucker Center and all of these other things that we're doing, bring it into the light. You cannot solve a problem that you cannot see or don't want to acknowledge. And there is too much of this. Well, I don't want to put this out there because it makes someone look bad. The truth is, let's all own that we all look bad. Like,
Right.
nobody's pointing fingers
You're
here.
not fooling anybody either.
Yes, we
We all
know.
see it.
Right. We all see that there aren't enough women coaches. We're all very aware that the experience of women across the board isn't where we want it to be. I am perfectly happy standing up at an event and raising my hand and saying, we are definitely part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. Like, when I make decisions, how am I looking at it through that lens? And can I do better? And what can I do more, different, better? That is an easy, psychologically, it might not be easy for somebody, but the information is there. The answers are actually there. Now, are they hard to do? Yes, but just bring it all into the light, own it, and stop fighting about who's going to fix it. I kind of feel this way about coaching
Right.
too.
Yeah.
It's like we're fighting so much about who's supposed to be fixing stuff that stuff doesn't get fixed. So why don't we just bring all the problems to the table? And, it's not, oh, this is the right way, and this is the right way, and this is the right way. You know what? None of us know what the right way is. Let's just start doing things, move the needle forward, try, fail forward, try something else. That's
Yeah.
what I think the easiest thing to do is put all the information, all the cards on the table, own it completely as an industry, and then start doing more stuff.
Yeah. And we all want the same thing at the end of the day. We all want to grow tennis. That's what we're all here to do. And what better way to grow tennis than to bring in the other half of the population?
Yeah,
That's a huge talent pool that we're missing out on.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Now, what do you think is the most challenging obstacle?
This one's a little bit easier for me to answer, actually. I think the way that the coaching industry is set up, and you kind of touched on this earlier in the podcast, is not set up in a way that can bring women in a sustainable way, in a sustainable and meaningful way. So there's a lot of components to that, but I'll just give you two. One is, you mentioned earlier, sort of the women and the stability. So we
Yeah.
talk about that a lot, and a lot of times it sort of automatically goes to the having kids and maternity leave. But there's another component of this that I think people don't think about, is that women from a healthcare perspective and seeing doctors and medical care, we need that throughout our lives, right? That's not something where women just are like, oh, I'm 20 now and I don't have to ever go to a doctor. We need insurance. We need medical coverage. We have medical needs that a lot of times men don't have.
And our insurance costs way more, especially if we're in our, what do they call it?
The childbearing years. Yeah. Yes.
They used to be popping out babies left and right. And so now your insurance is way higher than that. And yeah, of course, you're going to be looking for a job that offers health insurance.
and that I think is a systemic inequity, right? That isn't thought about, right? So, we see it here. Just any employer sees that, is that women's healthcare needs they're always there. And so having an independent contractor position, okay, great. But you have to think about those things, which is why I was so happy you did your podcast where you said, these are the things you should be thinking about and planning.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But I think the other thing is the culture. That's the second piece. So yeah, that the healthcare and the stability, yes, that is one thing.
Yeah.
The culture, however, is the other thing. So it's one thing to be offered a job or to have the opportunity, but it's another thing to say, as I sit in this seat that I've had now for 5 or 6 years, do I feel, that I am able to engage in this work in a way that is positive, but also challenging and respects me as a woman. Now, I feel that way, but in the coaching side, I can tell you, and even in the tennis industry, so many times things are said or done to you as a woman. And I'll give you just an example. There was a comment made yesterday related to an event I was at, and there was a woman, and at this event in front of everybody, somebody commented on the dress that the woman was wearing. And it was like, you would never see that if a man walked up and it was like, oh, that's the same suit you were wearing. Like nobody cares about that. And it just sort of sat in my brain. And I didn't say anything about it, but some people at the table were like, oh my God, I can't believe that comment was made. And I'm like, that culture of, as a woman, what are you experiencing day to day that we're judged so much on things, you can't, there's articles about you can't win at any age. If you're a younger woman, it's, oh, you don't know anything. Let me tell you how to do your job. And then if you're an older woman, you're past it. And then if you're in childbearing years, oh, is she going to have a kid? You just are under this different level of scrutiny than men are a lot of times. And it's that culture that's the hardest thing to fix, because again, you have to acknowledge it. You have to call it when it happens, and you have to correct it in a way that I don't think we're set up or prepared to do. So the nature of the structure of the job and the benefits and all of that, yes, that's problematic. But then the culture is by far the most challenging thing, because that would require just a huge lift. And it also would require possibly leaving people behind who are not advancing that type of culture.
I so agree with you with that. I think that's definitely the hardest challenge. And I think it starts with us. Because we're judging people because we judge ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it comes down to. I'll tell you one story real quick. One time, and I'll never forget this. This is my first year when I was in the Hamptons. This was years ago. And Mauresmo was coaching, I think it was Andy Murray. And I was like, this is amazing. I love this. I love Andy Murray for doing this. Like, this is, I was just like gushing about it, because I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And there were 2 other female pros, and they were like disagreeing with me, basically. They were like, why? That's stupid. Like, why would he do that? Why would you have a female coach you? If you're a guy, just have a guy coach you. Like that, she's not gonna understand the men's game. Like, I'm like,
oh my God.
So I will never forget that, because it just made me realize this is women saying this. Like, imagine what men are saying, right?
Yes.
So we have to watch what we say and really look within and look deep within about what we are doing to ourselves and to support each other, and just be more aware of it. And I'm just telling the story because I'm sure a lot of people have been there too.
Yes.
And it's just, that awareness of like, oh, maybe that's not the way to look at it, right?
And I agree with you. I think that's sort of the embedded culture that we're in, and sort of acknowledging and recognizing those messages that we're getting, every single day. I mean, you go on Instagram and, there's algorithms and things that track what you do on those platforms, and they feed you up content, right? Which is great marketing strategy. But then there's this other piece of it where it's like, it's looking at you as a woman of a certain age, a certain demographic. And I can't tell you how many things I get fed up and probably pun intended, fed to me in those platforms that have to do with, the way I look as a woman. Like, here are all the products that can make you look better at your age, or it's stuff related to kids. And it's sort of this built-in messaging that constantly is being emphasized over and over and over again, that is part of the overall culture, and we're as susceptible to it as men, right? And we have to be really mindful of that, of like going in a room. And one of the things that comes up in my world all the time is we went over this in one of our bias trainings, is that when a woman has a child, do you automatically start taking things off of her plate at work? And my answer to that, maybe because I didn't have kids, is no. Like, here's your work. Like, you tell me what your needs, wants, and desires are, and we'll figure out how do you get there. But that does happen quite a bit. And sometimes that happens a lot of times it happens between women. It's like, oh, Jennifer's about to have a baby. Jennifer, let me take some of this work off your plate. Are you okay? Do you need some time? And it's like, Jennifer is a perfectly capable adult human being to tell you what her needs are. And I think that message that we're sending each other is that, oh, you're less capable now because you had a child. Or, and we have to be mindful of that as women, and how we're supporting and showing up for each other. And then if we do make a mistake, to be able to sit down with each other, as women, and say, could you treat me differently? Or, I want to talk about that comment you made, or that discussion that we had, and be okay again in our society with being able to have those open conversations. And, sometimes we don't handle them well.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it's the stories that we tell ourselves, right? I mean, it's all a reflection of your inner world, what you're saying about another woman. So I think, it's just a matter of being aware, and then reflecting on, okay, why did I make that comment? Do I really think that? And how can I do better? And we can all do better.
One of the things I try to make as a rule for myself, for anybody, but particularly for women, there are women that, I work with that maybe we have different styles or we disagree about things, but I will never, ever, ever discount or say anything negative about another woman. Never. It's just, to me, it's already hard enough. Can I say I disagree with that person, or I don't agree with their viewpoints? Yes, I can absolutely do that. And some of my favorite women that I work with, we do not agree on things, but I absolutely will champion that person, because of, I just feel that it's so important to say, this woman is, just, we need you. We need you in our industry. If there's an opportunity, I'm going to fling it at you. And I do feel that. And I think we need more of that. It's, women supporting other women is super important, and showing up for each other. And your success is my success. I'm not in competition with you. I want you to succeed, and I'm going to cheer you on when you win. And I think if we do that for each other, like I said, I think we get over that hump, and we reach that point that we need to have better momentum in our industry.
Right. We help women and we grow tennis.
Win-win all the way around.
Exactly.
Well, I just so appreciate your questions today. And you are just one of my favorite women tennis coaches, you and Kathy Woods, two of my faves. And I'm so happy that you ended up in Florida as well. So I know that I will be cheering your podcast on. It's on my playlist in my Spotify. I hope everyone listening to this will listen to it, because it is a great podcast, and it does come at a different angle from what you typically hear. And I love that about you. And if there's anything that I can ever do to advance or your success, I'm here, and I'm always happy to do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for leading the way. And yeah, my podcast is called Vida Tennis, and I meant it to be for coaches and directors. But honestly, there's some there's different types of content.
So much in there. Yeah. It's for everyone. It's for everyone. And, I think your podcast was also a good example of, I've seen some other podcasts be launched in the industry, and I will tell you that men are very good at supporting other men who do podcasts. But my call to action, which I don't typically do on these, but I'm going to challenge our audience today that if you're a woman in tennis, in any area of tennis, to go ahead and download and follow Jennifer's podcast, Vida Tennis. You will not be disappointed. And let's make sure that we support other women who are speaking and who are using their voices to really support tennis. So every woman listening to this podcast, I challenge you to go ahead and download the pod and support Jennifer and leave a comment on it, because I can tell you we rarely get comments or feedback on these podcasts. Ours is the same, but we want them. And I know Jennifer wants your ideas and your help. And if you're a woman who wants to be on her podcast, definitely leave a comment, because she'll have you on, and we would love to have you. And it's a great way to have more women's voices out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jennifer, so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Have a great day. That's all for this edition of USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. For more episodes of the podcast, including upcoming topics, guests, and dates, please visit ustaflorida.com/here to serve. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.